Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are jumping right into the science behind chronic nerve pain. It's something that affects millions of people, but the way our bodies actually create that feeling of constant pain, well, that story is happening on a microscopic level, and it is absolutely fascinating. We're going to zero in on the key molecule that's responsible for cranking up the pain, and then we'll look at the incredible new ways we're learning to turn that volume dial back down. Okay, so let's set the stage. Before we can even talk about solutions, we've got to wrap our heads around just how big of a deal this is. Neuropathic pain isn't just a fleeting ache, oh no. It's a persistent, chronic condition that can pretty much take on a life of its own.
And get this, somewhere between 7 and 8% of the entire population deals with neuropathic pain. Just think about that for a second. That is a huge number of people living with this day in and day out.
So what are we actually talking about when we say neuropathic pain? Well, unlike the pain you get from a paper cut, this kind of pain comes from damage to the nerves themselves. It's like the wiring in your house has gotten frayed. The very system that's supposed to report damage is, well, it's damaged, and it starts sending all these faulty, painful, and frankly confusing signals to your brain. And this is where things get really tricky. For years, the main tools we've had to fight this, things like opioids or certain kinds of antidepressants, they just don't work all that well for this specific type of pain. A lot of the time, they offer very little relief, and they can come with some pretty serious side effects. It's exactly why scientists have been so obsessed with getting to the real root of the problem. To really crack this case, we have to zoom in. I mean, way, way in. We need to meet the microscopic star of our story, a little molecule that sits on the surface of our nerve cells. So if the wiring is faulty, what's the specific component that's blowing the fuse? What's the one piece of machinery at the very heart of this whole chronic pain situation? It's this guy right here, the NMDA receptor. Now, I know that's a mouthful. It stands for N-methyl-D-aspartate, but we can just call it the NMDA receptor. The best way to think about it is as the volume dial for signals in your brain. It controls how loud or quiet the messages between your neurons are. And in chronic pain, that dial is stuck on max volume.
And this isn't some simple on-off switch. No, it's a really complex machine built from 4 different parts, kind of like molecular Lego bricks. And depending on which bricks you use to build it, like the essential glue in 1 piece and the various glue in 2 pieces, the receptor can do slightly different jobs all over the nervous system. It's incredibly versatile.
So, the big question is, how does this volume dial get stuck? How does it get cranked up to 11 and then just stay there? Understanding this process is, without a doubt, the key to figuring out how a normal, acute pain can morph into a chronic, unending nightmare. Okay, so there's this really important idea you need to get, and it's called central sensitization. This is a huge deal. It's basically a state of high alert where your entire nervous system rewires itself to become way more efficient at feeling pain. Things that shouldn't hurt, like a light touch, suddenly become agonizing. And things that do hurt, well, they feel a whole lot worse. And here's exactly how it happens. Normally, that NMDA receptor has a tiny magnesium ion blocking it, acting like a cork in a wine bottle. But when a nerve gets hit with repeated pain signals, other channels nearby open up. This changes the electricity in the cell just enough to pop that magnesium cork right out. And once the cork is gone, bam! The floodgates open and calcium ions rush into the cell. That flood of calcium is the signal that basically tells the cell, red alert, ramp everything up, we need to get way more sensitive to pain right now. This phrase just nails it. Through that whole process we just talked about, central sensitization driven by the NMDA receptor, the nervous system literally changes its structure. It starts to build more receptors and strengthen the connections for pain signals. It actually learns how to be in a state of pain. But here's the thing. The NMDA receptor isn't a solo act, not at all. It's just one player in this massive, incredibly complex conversation that's always happening in the tiny gaps between our nerve cells. This image here gives you a little taste of that complexity. And hey, don't worry about reading every single label. The point is just to see how many different things are all interacting in one tiny space. Our NMDA receptor, that volume dial, is constantly being influenced by all these other signals. It's this intricate dance that makes managing pain so challenging. So let's look at just a few of the key players in this conversation. You've got GABA receptors, which are like the brakes on the system, always trying to calm things down. Then you have opioid receptors, and this is where it gets really wild.
Opioids can bring relief, sure, but if you use them long term, the nervous system tries to compensate. And guess how? By making the NMDA receptors even more active. It's a huge reason why opioid tolerance develops. And then you have cannabinoid receptors, which are kind of like a dimmer switch for the whole system. It's an incredibly delicate balancing act.
So if we understand how this whole machine works, if we know who's talking to whom, can we come up with smarter ways to finally turn that volume down? And the answer is absolutely. Okay, so let's recap. This right here, this is the problem. This is the before picture. You've got this overactive system. The NMDA receptor is stuck open, calcium is just pouring into the cell, and the pain signal is getting stronger and stronger. This is what we need to fix. The strategy, then, is actually pretty simple in theory. If the NMDA receptor is the amplifier that's stuck on high, let's just find a way to target it directly and turn down the volume. And these are some of the tools we can use to do it. You have drugs like ketamine, which basically acts like a plug, physically blocking the channel. Then there's memantine, which is a bit smarter. It tends to only block the receptor when it's firing way too much. We can even use good old magnesium, the body's natural cork. And believe it or not, even dextromethorphan, the stuff in a lot of cough syrups, has a mild blocking effect. It just kind of gently and temporarily quiets the receptor down.
But what's really, really hopeful is that this isn't all about drugs. We can actually influence these pathways with our own actions. It turns out that regular exercise can shift your metabolism, so your body produces fewer of the chemicals that naturally turn these receptors on. And things like cognitive behavioral therapy can help you regulate stress hormones, which would otherwise make your pain system even more sensitive.
And this is the goal. This is the after picture. By using all these different tools, we can reduce that calcium flood, calm the nerve cell down, and weaken that pain signal. We have successfully turned the volume back down to a normal level. So the big takeaway here is a total game changer. By understanding the story of what's happening all the way down at the molecular level, we can finally move away from one-size-fits-all treatments and start developing smarter, more targeted therapies that actually work and with fewer side effects. This is, without a doubt, the future of pain management. Which leaves us with one last, pretty profound thought. We are finally learning to speak the chemical language of our own nervous system. As we get better and better at tuning these tiny molecular dials inside our own bodies, what does the future of pain really look like? Maybe, just maybe, it's a future where chronic pain is no longer a life sentence, but simply a problem that we know how to solve.